Today we're going to look at another Grant Green lick. I've got a workshop coming up on November 2nd called Blue Note Blues, where we're going to check out how jazz musicians like Grant Green think about playing on the 12-bar blues. They're obviously doing more than just playing pentatonics, and they're obviously playing over more than just 1, 4, and 5. So figuring out what's going on is one of the big mysteries about playing that kind of music, but it's also really satisfying to play over the jazz version of the blues because you get to access all these new sounds without necessarily going overboard and learning everything there is to know about every scale and learning how to play everything in all 12 keys. You can just go into the kind of music that you like the best, if that's blues, and learn a new way to think about playing over those chords and even learn a few new chords to play on. I'm definitely going to be talking about Grant Green in this upcoming workshop, and so the opening chorus that I played just now is one of his solos on a Hank Mobley tune called Smokin, which is a very up-tempo 12-bar blues in B flat. And there's this moment I want to talk about today where he's on his way from the 1 chord to the 4 chord, and you hear this. What is that? What's it doing there? How does it work? And most importantly, how can you steal it and put it into your own playing? That's what we're going to talk about in today's lesson. So this lick crops up in the 4th chorus of a solo that Grant Green takes on a Hank Mobley song called Smokin. And it's a blues in B flat. Tempo is very fast. I won't lie, I had to slow this down to make sure I got all the notes right. And even then, there's a couple moments where I'm like, is he ghosting a note? Is he not? I don't know. But the basic idea, I feel pretty solid about. The solo starts out like this, the chorus, the 4th chorus. And then in measure 3, or actually the end of measure 2, beat 4, and that's the part I don't know if he's ghosting or just, but it's the same idea. It's a Charlie Parker idea, really, and it's Grant Green's spin on it. But that opening is kind of doing a little funny thing where it spells out a little bit of the F7 altered sound before landing on the B flat, and it starts right on the downbeat. So 1, 2, 3, and 1. And then in measure 2, the lick is sort of spelling out this sound of 4 to sharp 4 diminished, which is pretty common on a jazz blues in measure 2. And then on beat 4 of measure 2, we hear this, and then we're into beat 3, measure 3, measure 4. So we are clearly leaving the world of B flat for a minute and then coming back to it. So that's the part that we're talking about. Now, the thing about understanding how jazz musicians are thinking about chord progressions is often that they're imagining stuff that isn't literally there, which is actually a very cool idea, but it can be really confusing when you're listening to it. When you see this chord progression go by, that's the basic changes to the first 4 bars of a B flat blues. Maybe actually at this point in time, this is a recording from the early 60s, it's really more of a dominant sound than this like sort of swing sounding 6 chord. So, okay. But what musicians like Grant Green and Hank Mobley and Kelly are thinking about is they're thinking in bar 3 and 4, we're on our way from B flat to E flat. And the way to strengthen that is to not just sit on B flat, but to imagine that it's F minor 7, B flat to E flat. In other words, they're saying, okay, I want to have the strongest landing possible on this E flat chord. So I'm going to imagine for just a minute that E flat is the one, that it's home, that it's the place that everything I'm playing is going to get to. And it's going to get there in the most compelling way possible. And that is to think of it as, well, if this is home, then what would I do to set up home? Well, I could play 5-1. So already they're not thinking of this B flat as a 1 chord anymore. They're thinking it's the 5 of E flat. And once they're thinking that, they're like, oh, well, let's make it even more compelling. Let's play 2, 5, 1 in E flat. Can you do that? Apparently you can. Now there's a good chance that the musicians in the rhythm section, the bassist, the pianist, are gonna spell out some of this themselves, or at least hint at it. But the important thing is that even if they don't, the soloist is free to think that way. And so that's what Grant Green has going on in the back of his mind in measures 3 and 4, is turning it into a measure of F minor 7 and a measure of B flat 7 that's gonna land on E flat in measure 5. So as Grant Green's getting into this chorus, he's starting off end of measure 2, going into measure 3, he's like, okay, it's going to be kind of this thing. It's going to be F minor 7 to B flat. It's going to ultimately take me to the E flat in measure 5. So we hear this. And then here comes measure 3. Now this part right on measure 3 couldn't be any clearer. It's spelling out the root, 2nd, flat 3rd, 4th, and 5th of F minor, and then back down the arpeggio, flat 3, root 5. So right on measure 3, he's just spelling it out with 8 notes that just fill the measure with a solid wall of F minorness. So the way he gets into it, just before, is this little phrase where he's really already thinking F minor, and he's just kind of decorating the root. He's going around it, playing the 9 and the major 7, to get to that root. And then here, he's really working his way back chromatically down to the 3rd of B flat. So he's really, here's your F minor stuff. And then this is just chromatically getting from the root to the flat 7. Because at the heart of the sound of that 2 to 5 is this resolution of the flat 7 of the F minor to the 3rd of B flat, which can then go ultimately to the flat 7 of the E flat. That is what they call a guide tone line. And he's spelling it all out by this really decorative way. Pretty cool. Now, once you have a lick like this under your fingers, you can start to put it in place the same way that Grant Green does, even if you don't set it up exactly the same way. He is obviously also thinking about a bit of a guide tone line on the way up to the lick. So really you can hear this climbing up, and then that note is really the fulfillment of this whole thing that he set up. So that's one way to think about it. But as long as you're playing kind of B flat and E flat sounding stuff, it'll sound pretty convincing. You may have to experiment with a few different ways to do it, and when it sounds good and when it doesn't, but that's just part of the process. Once you have the lick, you can start to look for ways to use it. And once you've absorbed this idea that, oh yeah, in bars 3 and 4, I can turn it into F minor to F7 and land on E flat. Then you can take that idea and use it anywhere that you want. There's a lick that I learned in high school from my best friend. We called it the Joe Pass lick because it was on the Intercontinental record, which I think was the first Joe Pass record either of us had. And it's the same idea. There's spelling out F minor 9, and then there's like the flat 13, the 3rd, the root, and the flat 7 of B flat, landing on the 3rd of E flat. So it's the same idea. It's just a more dressed up thing, because instead of just using root 3, 5, and flat 7, it also uses the 9 of the F, and it uses the flat 13 of the B flat. Very fancy, very tricky, but basically the same idea. So have fun working with this Grant Green move from 1 to 4. When it comes to learning stuff off records, I really like having this kind of two-sided approach. One, get it accurately off the record and learn a little bit of it, just enough to be like, okay, I got this specific thing from this record. That is actually what's happening. And then also using that lick as a model to say, oh, now that I know this lick, I know that you can turn this move on the 1 chord going to the 4 chord into this kind of 2-5-1 that gets you to the 4 chord. And that's a move I can export to another key, to another song, to another groove, and it's going to be useful, and it's also grounded in this reality of this Grant Green recording. I think it's cool to be able to take that note-for-note stuff and think about it both ways. So that's the approach we'll be taking in my upcoming Blue Note Blues workshop, with the added advantage that we'll have the time to also look at how some of these licks occur in context, like not just here's this 2-bar moment, but this 2-bar moment occurs in the context of this 12-bar chorus on the blues. So let's look at how did Grant Green get into the chorus? How did he proceed to this particular moment and this particular 2-5 idea? What did he do when he got out of it? How did he end the chorus? That kind of thing. Because it helps to really see the overall logic of how someone's thinking about things as well as what they're doing in a specific moment. Ultimately, the idea is to put some new licks in your hands, help you expand your blues vocabulary, and show you what some of the ins and outs are of playing like a jazz musician on the blues form without losing the overall blues sensibility that we all really love. So if you want to check out the workshop, you can sign up at the link below. In the meantime, if you've got a question or a comment about today's lesson, leave it for me down below. I would love to hear from you. And as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.